We've all had that morning coffee. You roll out of bed, you're half asleep, you boil the kettle, you take that first heroic sip, and it tastes like burnt cardboard mixed with hot water and regret. In the UK, we drink a lot of coffee now. Supermarkets are stacked with Italian-style blends, gold instant jars, and extra dark ground coffee that promises cafe vibes at home. The big chains are everywhere. But here's the awkward truth: nobody on the packaging tells you some of the most popular coffee brands in the UK are consistently called out as bitter, weak, burnt, or just plain nasty. In this video, we're counting down the worst UK coffee brands you should seriously think twice about buying. This isn't about being a coffee snob or gatekeeping espresso. This is about brands that show up again and again in blind taste tests, angry reviews, and brutal forum threads, and still manage to charge you full price for a miserable cup. We'll look at high street chains that taste way better, with 3 pumps of syrup, supermarket Italian blends that somehow taste like an ashtray in a mug, and a few budget instants that barely even taste like coffee at all. And just to be clear, taste is subjective. If you love any of these brands, that's fine. Keep drinking what you enjoy. This list is based on public taste tests, common complaints, and overall value for money. Not a legal verdict, just commentary. Make sure you watch till the end, because our #1 spot goes to a so-called wake-up coffee from a posh UK supermarket that professional tasters literally described with words like burnt tyres and ash. You do not want that to be your next big shop impulse buy. Alright, grab whatever you're drinking right now. Let's be honest, there is nothing worse than handing over your cash, taking that first sip of coffee, and realizing it tastes like hot milk and regret. You know the feeling. You're half asleep on a Monday. You've got 5 minutes before the train, you grab a latte from the nearest shop, and boom, it's bitter, burnt, or somehow both weak and disgusting at the same time. Or you're at work, clutching that sad mug from the office kitchen, and the coffee tastes like someone boiled cardboard in a kettle. In the UK, we drink millions of cups of coffee every single day, and we've got more choice than ever. High street chains on every corner, shiny instant jars in every supermarket aisle, bargain tubs in pound shops, pods, beans, cold brews, you name it. But here's the problem. A lot of it is just bad, overpriced, under-flavoured, or straight up nasty. So in this video, we're counting down the worst UK coffee brands you should never buy, from big name chains that rely on sugar and syrups, to instant coffees that came dead last in blind taste tests, to those dreaded catering tubs hiding in office kitchens across the country. Quick disclaimer before we start. Taste is personal. You might love one of the coffees on this list, and that's totally fine. Every brand here has fans, and some specific locations or products can be good. We're talking about overall patterns, common complaints, blind taste tests, and real-world experiences where the coffee just doesn't live up to the hype or the price. And stick around, because our #1 spot goes to a budget instant coffee that official testers ranked at the very bottom. And you've probably walked past it in Lidl more than once. The UK used to be known as a tea nation, and then coffee quietly took over. Walk through any British city now and you'll see it. Costa, Starbucks, Pret, Nero, independent cafes, supermarket express machines, drive-through coffee at petrol stations. Caffeine is basically our national fuel. We've gone from instant granules in a jar to flat whites, cold foam, oat milk lattes, and TikTok famous iced drinks. At the same time, people have become way more coffee savvy. You've got home espresso machines, fancy grinders, specialty beans delivered through the letterbox, reusable pods, and endless how to make better coffee at home videos. So when a chain or a brand sells you something that tastes like dishwater, people notice. And they complain. Loudly. There's also the money side. With the cost of living up, coffee prices have crept higher. Some instant jars have jumped sharply in price. High street coffee can easily hit 3 to 4 tara a cup, more if you add syrups or extra shots. So a bad cup isn't just disappointing, it feels like a small financial crime. All of that means one thing: bad coffee stings more than ever. We're paying more, we know more, and we've got more choice. So when a brand consistently lets people down, whether it's a chain with weak flat whites or an instant that tastes like burnt chemicals, it sticks out. That's the context for this list. Not coffee snobbery, just value, taste, and how often people feel ripped off. Before we start roasting these brands harder than their beans, here's how this list was put together. First, we looked at blind taste tests and consumer reports, especially for instant coffee and supermarket-owned brands. These tests get regular people to try coffees without knowing the brand, then score them on flavour, aroma, strength, and overall enjoyment. That's where we see some surprising losers, including a budget instant that finished right at the bottom of the table. Second, we looked at customer reviews and online chatter. Places like Trustpilot, TripAdvisor, Reddit, parenting forums, and general worst coffee threads. We're looking for patterns, not one angry review. If hundreds of people complain about weak, burnt, or watery drinks from the same brand, that tells us something. Third, we considered value for money. A $1 coffee that tastes average is annoying, but a $4 coffee that tastes the same is offensive. So chains and brands that charge premium prices but deliver below average flavour get bumped down. Finally, there's real-world, everyday experience. Office kitchens, petrol stations, budget hotels, train station kiosks, all the places where many of us actually drink coffee. At number 10, we're starting with a chain that a lot of you probably grab on autopilot, Pret A Manger. On paper, Pret sounds like a safe bet. Busy locations, freshly made food, your classic city grab-and-go vibe. They've got subscriptions, filter coffee deals, oat milk, the works. You'd think the coffee would at least be decent. But if you spend any time scrolling through online reviews or coffee discussions, a pattern pops up over and over again. Burnt, too hot, bitter, tastes like it's been scorched. Especially in major city branches, people complain that Pret coffee often comes out way too hot, with a harsh, slightly charred flavour. Pret's coffee quality is also wildly inconsistent. One barista might pull you a pretty solid flat white. The next day, same order, it tastes like hot milk with a burnt aftertaste. For a lot of regulars, Pret's coffee is just a caffeine delivery system, something you grab because it's there, not because you enjoy drinking it. To be fair, Pret does have some redeeming points. The 99p filter coffee deals can offer decent value, and some branches clearly look after their machines better than others. But if you care more about flavour than convenience, Pret's habit of serving too bitter, too hot, or just meh coffee earns it the number 10 spot. At number 9, we've got a British legend, Greggs. Look, everyone loves Greggs. The sausage rolls, the pasties, the vegan stuff, the fact you can survive an entire shopping trip purely on their bakery items. But their coffee? That's where things start to fall apart. A lot of people describe Greggs coffee with one brutal phrase: like hot, dirty water. Over and over, reviewers say that while it's cheap and drinkable, it's also thin, weak, and forgettable. It's the sort of coffee you sip and immediately wish you'd just ordered water and saved yourself the disappointment. To be fair, Greggs never really pretends to be a specialty coffee shop. The price is low, the food is the main event, and the coffee is there. And some people genuinely like it, especially if they prefer very mild, non-bitter coffee. But if you're the kind of person who likes a bold, flavoursome cup, Greggs really doesn't deliver. It feels like they took the idea of coffee, whispered it over some hot water, and called it a day. So why is it only number 9? Because it's honest about what it is. Cheap, basic, quick. It's not offensively bad most of the time. It just rarely hits the spot. Think of Greggs coffee as that background extra in a movie, technically present, but you'll forget it the second it's gone. At number 8, we have the global giant itself, Starbucks. Now, Starbucks in the UK is known for a few things: massive menu, seasonal drinks, a mountain of syrups and toppings, and the ability to customize your order into a 17-word sentence. But when you strip all that away and actually taste the coffee, a lot of people come to the same conclusion. Is there any coffee in here? One of the biggest complaints you'll see online is that Starbucks drinks are too milky and too sweet. Lattes and cappuccinos taste like warm milk with a faint hint of coffee. You have to specifically order extra shots or stronger options to get something that feels like a proper caffeine hit. For casual drinkers who like a coffee-flavored dessert, that's great. For coffee lovers, not so much. On top of that, the espresso itself often gets described as bitter and flat. So you end up with the worst of both worlds: harsh shots hidden under a pile of milk and syrup. And you're paying a premium price for the experience, especially if you go large, add extras, or get one of the famous seasonal creations. To be fair, Starbucks does what it does very well. Comfort drinks, sugary treats, a familiar brand you can find almost anywhere. The problem is simply this: in the UK, you can often walk a few doors down and get a better tasting coffee for the same price or less. So Starbucks lands at number 8. Not the absolute worst, but very often more about the cup, the brand, and the sugar rush than the actual coffee. Number 7 goes to Costa Coffee, the UK's biggest coffee chain. If you judge purely by how many stores they have, Costa is the king of the high street. They're everywhere: shopping centres, retail parks, service stations, offices, Costa Express machines at petrol stations and supermarkets. It's almost impossible not to see Costa in a UK town. But here's the issue: when you look at reviews and everyday experiences, Costa's coffee is all over the place. Some people swear by their flat whites and cappuccinos. Others describe the drinks as bitter, burnt, or strangely weak, depending on who made it and where you bought it. You'll see complaints about cappuccinos that are 90% milk and foam, with barely any coffee flavour, or lattes that taste like overcooked milk with a sharp, unpleasant edge. Then you've got the Costa Express machines. In theory, they use the same beans and recipes. In practice, a lot of people say the machine coffee tastes even more inconsistent, sometimes watery, sometimes scalding hot, sometimes just wrong. And yet, you're usually paying close to what you'd pay at the actual store. Costa also leans heavily on snacks, branding, and convenience. But when your entire identity is being the coffee chain of Britain, the coffee itself has to deliver. And too often, it just doesn't. Again, this doesn't mean every Costa drink is bad. Some branches are genuinely decent, some baristas clearly care, and some limited drinks are nice. But when you zoom out and look at the average experience, Costa is a classic case of big brand, mid-flavour, and hit-or-miss quality. That's why it lands at number 7. The chain you settle for because it's there, not because you love the coffee. In the number 6 spot, we've got Caffè Nero. On the surface, Nero looks like the classy option. Dark blue branding, Italian coffee company signs, comfy chairs, big windows, soft music. It markets itself as the more authentic espresso bar on the high street. But dig into the reviews and the stories, and a very different picture starts to form. Plenty of customers complain about burnt-tasting espresso, lattes that are either lukewarm or scalding, and cappuccinos that taste like the machine hasn't been cleaned properly. Some people describe Nero coffee as having a slightly dirty or metallic aftertaste, as if the equipment is overdue for a deep clean. Then there's the cleanliness issue in some branches. Not all, but enough to notice a pattern. Unclean tables, sticky floors, overflowing bins, flies buzzing around food counters, cups left on every surface. When your whole brand is Italian cafe culture, walking into a messy store with average coffee kind of kills the vibe. To be fair, there are fans who genuinely like Nero's coffee. Some locations do a good flat white. Some staff clearly take pride in what they serve. But that's part of the problem. It shouldn't be a lottery. When you see the same complaints repeated in different towns and cities, it's hard to ignore. So Nero ends up at number 6, the chain that looks like the sophisticated choice, but too often serves coffee that tastes like disappointment with a side of crumbs. And we're only halfway. Before we move into the top 5 worst offenders, quick pause. If you've made it this far, you're clearly serious about not drinking terrible coffee again. So I want to know, what's the worst coffee you've ever had in the UK? Was it from a chain, a hotel, or a random petrol station machine? Drop your story in the comments, especially if it was so bad you still remember it years later. At number 5, we're not targeting one single brand. We're calling out a whole category, the big-name gold instant coffees. You know the ones. They sit at eye level in every supermarket. Shiny labels, words like smooth, rich, gold blend, pure gold. Names like Nescafé Gold Blend, Kenko Smooth, Kenko Gold, Douwe Egberts. Pure gold. They look premium. They sound premium. The price certainly feels premium. But here's the thing. When these gold label instants get thrown into blind taste tests alongside supermarket own brand versions, they don't always come out on top. In some cases, cheaper supermarket gold instants are rated just as good or better than the big brands. And when real people describe the taste, you get the same phrases again and again. Fine, but bland. Smooth, but kind of boring. Nothing special for the price. These coffees aren't usually disgusting. They're just overrated. They're the definition of middle of the road. No major flavor notes, no real complexity, just generic coffeeness. If you drown them in milk and sugar, they do the job. But if you're drinking them black or comparing them to fresher options, they're underwhelming. The worst part is the value. You're often paying noticeably more per cup compared to a decent supermarket own brand that tastes just as good, if not better. Most of what you're buying is the familiar logo and the marketing budget. So the gold jars land at number 5, not the absolute worst tasting coffee, but some of the worst value for money, especially if you think premium on the label means premium in the cup. Next up, a classic red jar that many of us grew up with and may need to leave in the past. Number 4 goes to a true cupboard icon, Nescafé Original. If you grew up in the UK, you've definitely seen this jar. The red label, the classic granules, the smell when someone opened it in the office kitchen. For years, Nescafé Original was coffee for a lot of British households. But nostalgia is one thing. Actually drinking it now, in 2025, when we've got so many better options, is another story. The most common description of Nescafé Original is simple, harsh. The flavour is sharp, bitter, and very one-note. It's like the volume on the bitterness is turned up. But all the interesting flavours, chocolatey, nutty, fruity notes, are turned way down. Add milk and sugar, and it becomes drinkable, sure. But as a straight cup of coffee, it's not exactly pleasant. Then there's the price versus quality problem. Over time, some Nescafé lines have crept up in price, while own brand alternatives and better tasting instants have stayed cheaper. So you end up paying more for a taste that honestly feels stuck in the 90s. For a lot of people, Nescafé Original is their desperation coffee. The jar you keep at the back of the cupboard for emergencies. The one you drink at your nan's house because there's nothing else. The one in the office that everyone complains about, but nobody bothers replacing. It's not toxic, it's not the absolute bottom of the barrel, but it's stubbornly mediocre, especially in a world where better instant coffee exists at the same or lower price. So Nescafé Original lands at number 4, the coffee your tongue has outgrown even if your memories haven't. In the number 3 spot, we're heading to the very bottom shelf of the supermarket. You know how the gold jars sit at eye level? Now crouch down. Those cheap, no-frills jars with names like Value Instant Coffee, Smart Price Coffee, or just Instant Coffee with a plain label. That's what we're talking about. These are the absolute rock-bottom budget instances. They're usually the lowest price per 100 grams, and the packaging makes it very clear. No fancy descriptions, no tasting notes, no talk of origin, just coffee granules. And that's exactly what they taste like. Generic, thin, chemically bitter coffee. When people describe these in reviews, you see words like watery, acidic, and like brown hot water with a weird aftertaste. The aroma is often weak or slightly artificial, and if you drink them black, every flaw is painfully obvious. To be clear, nobody expects these to taste like specialty beans. They have a job to deliver caffeine at the lowest possible cost. If you're absolutely skint, or you just need something to wake you up, and you don't care about flavour at all, they technically do that. But here's the thing. Often, for just a tiny bit more money, you can get a mid-range supermarket own brand coffee that is miles better, smoother, more balanced, actually smells of coffee. The value range is the point where cheap becomes too cheap. These bottom shelf coffees are the ones you regret buying halfway through the jar, but you keep drinking them out of stubbornness. They're also the ones that park themselves in shared cupboards in student houses and never seem to run out. So at number 3, supermarket value instant coffees take the podium. The stuff that proves there really is such a thing as coffee that's too cheap. And if you think these are bad, wait until we talk about the mystery tubs hiding in offices and church halls across the country. Number 2 is the villain of countless office kitchens and community centres, pound shop and catering tub coffee. You've seen these, giant tins or tubs labelled something like catering coffee granules or instant coffee suitable for vending machines. Often a plain design, tiny print, no clear info about the beans, the roast, or anything else. The main selling point isn't flavour, it's cost per cup. These coffees show up in offices, church halls, scout huts, discount shops, school staff rooms, and anywhere else people need to caffeinate large numbers of humans as cheaply as possible. They're usually loaded with low-grade Robusta, processed to within an inch of its life. The taste? People describe it as vile, sour, and weirdly burnt all at once. There's this specific kind of dull bitterness that hangs around in your mouth, mixed with a slightly stale, dusty flavour. If you leave it to cool down, it somehow tastes even worse, like cold brown sadness. This is the coffee you drink at a training day and think, I actually wish this was just hot water. It's the coffee at a budget hotel's breakfast buffet that makes you seriously consider going back to bed. It's the coffee at a community event, where the biscuits are better than the drink by a mile. To be fair, these products have a purpose. They keep costs low. But if we're ranking coffee on enjoyment, not just efficiency, catering tub and pound shop instant coffee deserves its place near the very bottom. The only reason it's not number 1 is that you can kind of understand what you're getting into. It looks cheap, it tastes cheap, and nobody pretends otherwise. Our number 1, though, that's a specific brand that people expect to be decent, but in a proper taste test, it came out last. Taking the number 1 spot for worst UK coffee you should never buy is a very specific product. Lidl's Bellarom Gold Instant Coffee. On the shelf, it looks like any other supermarket premium instant. Gold label, respectable branding, promises of smooth flavour. It's the kind of jar you'd chuck in your trolley without thinking twice, especially if you're trying to save a bit compared to the big names. But when this coffee was put into a blind taste test against other popular gold blend instants, including both big brands and other supermarket-owned labels, it didn't just perform badly. it came dead last. Testers scored it significantly lower than the competition, describing it as weak and underwhelming. A lot of people said it just wasn't strong enough and lacked the proper coffee punch they expected from something called Gold. In a lineup where some budget and mid-range coffees actually held their own, Bellerom Gold was the clear loser. Here's why that matters. Most of the other coffees on this list look cheap or are openly positioned as bargain options. With Bellerom Gold, the packaging and branding suggest something a little nicer, a step up from basic instant. So when you brew a cup and it turns out thin, flat and forgettable, it's especially disappointing. If you already buy it and you genuinely enjoy it, keep drinking it. Taste is personal, and nobody can argue with what your own tongue likes. But if you're standing in Lidl, trying to choose a jar based on flavour and value, the data says this is one to skip. There are other Lidl coffees, other supermarket instants, and real beans that give you more for your money. Bellerom Gold is very simply the one that came last when it counted. And that's why Lidl Bellerom Gold takes the crown as our #1 worst UK coffee brand you should never buy. Let's rapid fire 2 dishonourable mentions. Coffees that didn't quite make the main list, but still deserve a warning label. 1. Oversweet chilled coffee drinks in supermarkets. You've seen them. Little bottles and cans in the fridge section, labelled as iced lattes or caramel macchiatos. Taste-wise, they're basically coffee-flavoured milkshakes. Loads of sugar, barely any actual coffee flavour. They're fine as a treat, but if you're genuinely thirsty for coffee, you'll be disappointed. It's like ordering a strong espresso and getting a melted dessert. 2. Anonymous petrol station filter coffee. Not the machines from known brands. We're talking about the random jug sitting on a hot plate, or the big silver urn with a handwritten coffee label. Half the time, it tastes like it's been sitting there since dawn. Stale, burnt, and somehow both watery. And bitter. If you're desperate on a long drive, fair enough. Otherwise, grab a bottle of water and an energy bar instead. 3. Your own ancient jar of instant coffee. Let's be real. Some of the worst coffee you'll ever drink isn't from a brand. It's from your own cupboard. That jar you opened in 2018. The one that's turned into a solid brick of granules. Technically still coffee, but all the aroma and flavour are long gone. If it looks like a fossil, it's probably time to let it go.